A classic British shepherd's pie may be the greatest cold weather dish ever, and if you cook it the whole way in a big cast iron instead of transferring it to a casserole or something, it's a pretty efficient meal. Plus, you get more brown crust per bite when you bake it in something wide and shallow. Big 12-inch cast iron or any oven-safe pan is fine. And it's a shepherd's pie, so we need some sheep. 2 pounds of ground lamb, almost a kilo, and I'm just putting it into a dry, cold pan and smooshing it out into a wide, thin disc. I'll turn the heat on high under that, and it'll render out enough fat to cook itself. While it's getting started, I'll prep my vegetables. And while I'm loath to admit it, I do like this thing I got from Gordon Ramsay, where you grate the carrots and onion rather than chopping them. You could chop them, but grated, they seem to form a structural mesh that helps bind the filling together in the pie. That's 1 big onion and 3 or 4 carrots. And over here, I can smell that my mince is browning on the bottom. Brits call it mince, even though it's ground, not minced. A stout wooden spoon is really the only tool for a job like this, and as I stir the veg in and break everything up, you can see the literal base of browned flavor I've already got, and we can get more, but first we got to evaporate a ton of water out of this pan. About 5 minutes after the veg went in, I can feel things drying out, so I'm going to reduce the heat to medium. At this stage, things could get out of control really fast and burn. Once I start seeing a carpet of brown stuff forming on the pan that I can't readily scrape up, I know I've done about all I can do, got to deglaze soon. So in goes a huge squeeze of tomato paste, maybe a 1/4 cup, and a 1/4 cup of flour, 30 grams. If you want your filling to be really solid inside the pie, you could use like twice that much flour. I don't want it to be too gluey. I'll stir and cook that for as long as I can until burning is imminent, which is just going to be a couple of minutes, and there, we got to get that off the bottom. You know I'm going to use white wine. I think it's amazing how much it improves a dish like this. It just makes it so much brighter and fresher in the end. I'm putting in half a bottle and scraping until the bottom of this pan is clean. A lot of people like red wine in this. If you use it, I recommend half as much or it'll get bitter. And if you don't want to use alcohol, water or stock is fine, with a big slash of balsamic vinegar. If you want that same sweetness and acidity, you can add the vinegar to taste at the end. Now, more flavorings. I think you almost can't have enough Worcestershire sauce. Like, give me a whole bottle, or at least half a cup, 120 mils. Dried herbs, I'm doing a ton of dried thyme and sage. You're flavoring not only the mince, but the potato topping too, so I think it should be really strong. Garlic powder is phenomenal in something like this where it can really rehydrate, and I like some mustard powder too if you got it. No salt until we can taste for seasoning because the Worcestershire sauce is so salty. And then just enough water or stock to cover everything. Stir that all in, and then I will simply reduce it to a simmer and let it cook down until thick. I think the texture is really better if you give it an extra half hour at least to stew like this and dissolve some collagen or whatever. And if you're a lucky duck like me and you've got a few ice cubes of Chef John-style homemade demi-glace in the freezer, now is a great time to deploy them. A big spoonful of store-bought stock concentrate or something would perform a similar function, or a stock cube. You just won't get the luscious texture the demi-glace provides. And now it's time to consider the considerably less healthier layer of the pie, potatoes. I'm marginally able to get away with eating this because for breakfast I enjoy the sponsor of this video, Magic Spoon cereal. Let me thank them. Ooh, the new peanut butter flavor. Magic Spoon is basically a child's breakfast cereal that won't totally wreck your adult body. They have all the sweet flavors you love from childhood, but instead of being chiefly made of corn or wheat or some other empty carb, these are made of protein, milk protein. There's 11 grams of protein, 0 sugar, and only 3 net carbs in a serving. It is magic. Whether you have a new fitness resolution or you're just trying to offset your winter comfort eating like I am, build your own custom box of flavors today. Yes, they let you do that now. Hey, they got cinnamon too, seasonal. Hit my link in the description for $5 off with a 100% money-back happiness guarantee. I don't think you're going to need that. You'll love it. MagicSpoon.com/Ragusia for $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon. Now back to the empty carbs. I've got 2 pounds or almost a kilo of floury potatoes here, russets. I prefer their texture on a shepherd's pie, but you do got to peel them. Their skins have this horrible wet paper bag texture when boiled. I'll just hack those into chunks for faster and more even cooking. I like a relatively thin potato layer on my pie. If you want something more like equal parts potato and meat filling, you could almost double the potatoes here. Fill that up with water, bring it to a boil, and simmer until very fork tender. Not like that, falling apart when you stab them. Drain them through a gap in the pot lid, and you don't have to get a big colander dirty. This is a 2-pot dinner. there. Time for butter, and they like a bit of shepherd's pie in Ireland too. I'm doing a whole darn stick of butter. You could use less. Heat is off, and I'll just let it melt in there in the residual heat while I finish up the meat. You want to reduce this until it's quite thick, or else it won't hold together at all in the pie. Time to taste and make final adjustments. I'll grind in a huge amount of pepper, and I think I want some more garlic powder and a big pinch of salt. I love this kind of meal because there should be no surprises. You can taste every element before it's done, and if it needs some more sweetness or more acid or more salt or anything, you can just stir it in and taste again. You can't lose. Now, fully off the hot burner this comes. The cooler this is, the more viscous it is, and the more viscous it is, the easier it'll be to spread our potatoes on top. They won't just sink. Speaking of which, I'll put in a glug of milk and a pinch of salt to start with and start mashing. Mike could put in some more milk. It should look looser than you want it at this stage because we're going to put in more stuff that will cause it to thicken and set later. Cheese. A lot of people put in Parmesan. Feels wrong to me. I'm just putting in some sharp English cheddar. It looks like I did maybe 50 grams there, a couple ounces, and then egg yolks. These are what make the potato topping set into a puffy, solid pie crust. Plus, they taste great. 2 should do it. I'll get that all mixed in and then taste for seasoning. Needs more salt, and there we are. At the last possible second, I'll chop up a little fresh rosemary from my plant and dump that in. You don't have to have that. Also, at the last second, a whole 10-ounce bag of frozen peas. That's 280 grams. You do that at the last second, and you're going to keep the peas from being disgustingly overcooked by the end. Plus, if they're frozen, they're going to cool this down, which makes it more solid and therefore easier to top. Smooth everything off. Conversely, the potato topping should be still hot when you put it on. Otherwise, it won't flow as easily as you're trying to spread it around. You can make things a lot easier by depositing it in drops all over the pie. Now you simply don't have to spread it as far to reach the edge. I like kind of pulling it with the spatula, scraping and pulling toward the edge. It can be a little tricky to do this without mixing the filling up with the potato, but if that happens, it really doesn't matter much, and you certainly don't have to make a seal or anything. I just like how the topping goes brown and crispy on the pan edge. The more irregular the potato top, the more browned surface area you'll have, hence the tradition of forking the top. I'm just doing a spiral pattern for fun, and in this will go to an already hot oven, 400 Fahrenheit, 200 C. A convection fan is good, and it's good that this pan is not quite filled to the brim because it's going to bubble and puff up. Here we are after a half hour, and see, it's done when it's bubbly and puffy. If you're not happy with the browning you've got, you could always turn on the top element, the broiler at the very end. I've got some chives I'm going to slice up and scatter over top. I'll be honest and say I'm probably only doing that for the thumbnail, and the trick is just letting this rest and cool for at least 20 minutes. I'm scooping it here after 10 minutes, and you can see how hot it still is, and therefore how liquid it is. Still darn tasty, though. That potato topping is so puffy. If you're more patient and let it cool a little bit longer, you're going to get a more solid texture on that filling. I love how it's slightly sweet against the salty potato. The white wine helps with that. So go out, provision yourself for the winter, and as the Brits would say, tuck in.